I still got to get you to extend that freaking that little ditty at the beginning. Guys, it is 5 o'clock on Monday. Time for some after hours real estate. New look today. Damn, I haven't even introduced Dave yet, and he's already showing the beers. Like, let's go, man.
Yeah, it's a good spirit on that one.
I don't want to say where I'm located because it's not quite 5 o'clock here yet.
That's right. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock here. Yeah.
You have to drink after you're a fan of this team after yesterday's performance.
Oh my God, man. Guys, Chris Pesek, I am a real estate broker in Austin, Texas. That guy there, everything's changed. Stephen Babcock, mortgage loan originator in Austin with Motto Mortgage. And down below me, that's David Novak. David Novak's a buddy of mine out of Denver, Colorado. David, I mean, dude, we brought you on today to talk through some stuff. So why don't you kind of let people know, like, where you are, what exactly you do, and what you used to do, evidently, because I didn't even know that.
Oh, surprised you, huh?
Oh, wait, I screwed it up. Steve, what are you drinking before we do that?
Yeah.
Ran out of beer, so I went to a wine today. I got a nice little Merlot here.
My man's drinking Merlot.
There's nothing wrong with red wine.
What's that?
I have Melvin Juicerium.
My man is an IPA fan.
But I'm a red wine connoisseur as well.
Yep,
oh, nice. Nice.
My grandma Maddie said all red wine's good, kids.
I was just discussing the other day that line from Waiting when he's like, I don't want any Merlot, and then the Merlot industry tanked like 60% the next year. Like and it's an indie movie, like out of all movies to have an impact like that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sounds awesome. I'm drinking sparkling water.
Hey, either.
I know, damn it. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, David.
All right, man. Let us in a little bit on what you do.
Yeah, well, I'm out here in Denver, Colorado. I actually live in Littleton, Colorado, a suburb out here, and moved out here in 2003. And what brought me out here from originally Nebraska is I was a mortgage lender. I started that back in 96, 97. So I'm a fossil to the industry. And we moved out here in Colorado to kind of expand our mortgage bank. We were doing third-party originations. We had offices all over the country. And then financial crisis, our company's still here. We made it through all that, but I decided to sell my company in 2014 and got into flipping houses. And during that period, I went out and got my real estate license, and I'm a licensed broker out here. So I help people buy and sell homes too. I guess they reach out to me because they know I destroy homes out here and see everything that I do. But yeah, I've been in the industry close to 30 years. So it's been quite a ride. So yeah, I'm a dinosaur.
The good thing is there's finally somebody on the show older than me.
I'm older than everybody when I come in the room.
Oh shit, man, that's good stuff. And people need to know, like, seriously, if you're looking for flips or even for something to buy in the Denver area, call David. Follow him on Facebook. You see all of his cool flips, and you see his sweet Corvette. Yeah. That's when times were good, is when you bought that Corvette.
Yeah. But still enjoying that though. And now the weather's being perfect. So now after this, I'm going to go out and take that baby for a cruise.
Drop the top down. Nice. Guys, we're going to do a little bit of a different format today. I've got an article that I pulled up, and we brought Dave in as additional backup for Steve and I. So we're going to read through this article. It's something Steve and I have been talking about for a while. And, we're those damn greedy realtors, Dave and I, that, it's always a good time to buy a house. And shit, Steve just wants to sell you a loan because, that's how he puts food on the table. So we're all those greedy people that you always hear about. But, let's read an article and, put some of this stuff into context. So, guys, I'm just going to kind of go down through here and read a little bit. And
show the title, though.
Oh, yeah, I guess we need the title. The title is Home Prices Almost Never Go Down. I know that's shocking to a lot of people, but let's start there. David, you've been in the business a long damn time.
Yeah.
Do values go down often?
Not really. Not unless you go to do a construction loan, close on it, and the financial crisis hits the minute you put the shovel in the ground.
It's funny. This article talks about 5 of the 7 years of the worst down years were the years you had your mortgage company, based on what you just told us. So
yeah.
You lived through the bulk of the worst years and I'm probably getting ahead of myself here. And you're still with that attitude. You still have that attitude after living through the worst of what this article will tell us about. Just to the naysayers out there, I figured I'd just mention that.
Well, I think I'm just callous now. So, but yeah, I don't know, home prices, obviously through those times with the foreclosures and all that, they came down a bit, but I was looking at a chart today just because of this call. And it was, I did it from September of 2008 till now. And it showed the average prices and so forth. And it just 45-degree angle. And during a few of those years, it went down just a smidge. And I think the last time it did that was 23, I believe. 2023, there was a little down, and then now we're back up. So through it all, I wish I could go back to that time and buy 100 homes. Everybody was throwing their keys away, and I was like, oh man, wish I could have bought more of those.
And Chris and I always joke that everyone always says the best time to buy was 2 years ago.
It's true. Right when you think that, everybody, I don't know how it is there, but people want to wait for the prices to come down and so forth. And I just tell them not to wait too long, because we're still cheaper than California out here.
I told Chris that the first time in 3.5 years doing the show, maybe last week, that if I were a buyer for the first time ever, I might wait until after the election. But that was it's due to the strength of the dollar, and that has nothing to do with almost anything else. The other thing is that the Fed looks like they're getting political, which they strive to avoid looking political. So if they're getting political or they're looking like they're political when they're striving not to, that makes me so nervous. I just, I don't know. So if I were going to delay, I might delay for 2 months. But other than that, usually it's always a buy, for the same reason we just said, the best time to buy is 2 years ago.
You have a great point, though, the Fed getting because going back all these years back and everything, and I think about the past elections and so forth, and I can't remember people being so hesitant as they are right now. Everybody I talk to, as far as listings, buyer, whatever, everybody's like, I just want to wait until after the election.
Yeah, we've seen a lot. Well, I've seen a lot. I don't know about you, Chris, but yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of people waiting.
Yeah, that's a fact. And we'll talk about that in a little bit even more. But if you're looking for the article, it's msn.com. This is straight off of Microsoft News 3 days ago. So this came out Friday is when I found it. So three things are certain in life: death, taxes, and ever rising home prices. Last is, of course, slightly less certain because there's moments in American history when prices have fallen, but it's a rarity. So much so that you can pinpoint only 2 eras in recent time when home prices declined: a short-lived recession in the early 90s, and the great financial crisis in the aughts. That would be the 08, 09 for people that don't know what an aught is. To state the obvious, this is extraordinary for anybody who owns a home and dire for anyone who doesn't think of the dichotomy between baby boomers and their millennial children. Beginning in the 70s and into the 80s, baby boomers who were coming of age and entered the housing world fueled a boom So home prices generally rose, as did mortgage rates. Steve, what do you always talk about the mortgage rates in the early 80s?
Oh God, 17.5%, which really means it was. I talked to one lender that did a mortgage at 22.5% in the 80s. In 83, she did 22.5%, highest
I
she ever
was
did when she was originating. But I mean, ow.
I was doing a few of those in the 90s at the finance companies still.
Holy crap. Yikes.
Crazy.
Oh, man.
Just
So
nuts. Yeah, nuts.
an economic downturn began in 1990, but it was pretty mild. Unemployment peaked in 92, and home prices were already back on the rise. Then there was a great financial crisis, the Big Bad Wolf. Wolf of Wall Street is the reference in case y'all didn't watch it. From the end of 91 up until what would become the early aughts of the crisis, you can see home prices rising. It's a slow burn at first, but by the early 2000s, home prices are leaping. In 04 and 05, values are seeing double-digit increases. And I'm going to context here. This is talking about nationally. This is not a specific market. Okay, so we're going to talk national numbers. But of course, all that came to an end because as housing was becoming more and more unaffordable, lending was crazy. This Zellman was saying that there was no money down in liar loans. And Zellman was one of the only analysts to call the housing crash in 06 as it was developing before it turned into the financial crisis. So before we jump off there, this is the chart that we're talking about. So here's the little downturn in the early 90s. This is the financial crisis that started in 07. We peaked in late 06. So I'm going to let you guys kind of get off and talk about what the lending environment was like then. And David, you may be the better one, but Steve, I know you know a ton about this as well.
I've heard horror stories, but I got in 2012. So in my defense, I wasn't part of that lending environment, but so I don't think I have too much to say on that front. I could tell you stories I've heard, but I wasn't there. So yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting times. It's all the products that were available back then. And, you know, from where I was at in my mortgage company at that time, my mortgage bank, since I was the owner of the company, we were guaranteed on these loans. I looked at every file. I mean, as far as the end approvals in that, and you look through that era of the stated income, we had 2-3 year adjustable rate fixed, and then after that they adjusted, but they had 5-year prepays on them, so people were stuck, and interest only. And I don't want to make us sound like we did a little extra layers back then, though. We used to give disclaimers to people about their taxes, because we did a lot of new builds at the time. And if you know about new builds, and this is even nowadays, the taxes, when you go get a new build, they're based upon, like the land in that. So they're real cheap. And so we would go and meet with the people, and these builders would shove those over to us. And somehow we always felt like they didn't want us to tell them that the next year their taxes were going to be $2,000-3,000. But we wanted them to know, because if you think about the interest only and everything, people's debt to income ratios were still pushing about 50% back then. And those prices aren't anywhere where we're at now. And I got out of lending. I sold my company back in 2014, and I just see the people I deal with right now. And, those loans that we did, I get advertised. I still see there's a few of those coming around, coming back.
I was about to say, we still run into issues with new builds and taxes still. Yeah. The builders get angry with us for disclosing certain things. And why'd you tell them that kind of stuff? Yeah. All the time.
Yeah. Yep. Those were just, and I would call my underwriters down where I sold my loans to, and we just saw that financial crisis coming, because we had to do like a net disposable income and everything after their payments and everything. And it was like, I don't know how people were going to make it and such, but we did everything the lenders had, but we did do the extra disclosures, which some of the builders and that didn't like. But yeah, I mean, it's no wonder people got into trouble, because Yeah, when you're at a 52% debt to income ratio and an interest only, and your taxes go up, and then you got, you can't sustain it.
Yeah.
We got an approval last year for a VA at 80%. So I'm telling you, the rules today are such, and I believe they were the same back when you were lending. But if someone comes to me and qualifies for a mortgage, and I choose not to offer them that mortgage, I can go to jail for not offering them that mortgage. Hey, you qualified, you can own a house now. If I don't tell them that when they do, I'm in big trouble. And it's the one thing they didn't tell you about the financial crisis. If you're just the average Joe out there, that when you were a lender back then, pulling people off the streets and forcing them into mortgages they couldn't afford, right? I'm doing the air quotes here, right? They also forgot to mention that the government had this little rule that said that if someone qualified, you had to offer them the mortgage, right?
Yeah, I mean, it puts
tiny detail.
It really puts you, because back then and even now, people look back and there were a lot of people that just jumped in the business and they did it wrong, but there were still people that were good doing it. And and this kind of getting off track, but those neg-am or reverse mortgages, I wouldn't even allow my employees to do them. But unless you understood them, and this is getting off track, but it goes into kind of what I do now when I'm out buying homes from estates because they're so worn out and everything, I'll buy, but they have these reverse mortgages. And the first thing the family all thinks that the lender took them, didn't in everything, but they don't realize those are good loans because it keeps that person in the house. Yeah. They don't want to go to a retire, the family's mad because they're retired, all their inheritance.
Their money's gone. Yeah. Hey, the loans are much better, by the way. I'd like everyone to know this that's watching. The reverse mortgages have improved dramatically over the last decade or so. They're no longer what they used to be. There's built-in protections. If you exceed the amount of money that the bank is paying you or the home is worth, the bank will still have to keep 5% of the proceeds and give it to the family, so that even after you die, right, so that they're not riddled with debt. There's plenty of other things, and I'm sorry to take over David, but yeah, they're way better today than they were.
To be honest with you, I'm glad I hear that, because I didn't, I tried to keep myself out of that lending world after I got out of it.
Yeah, they had the potential to be abused, and they've been fixed quite a bit.
I just know that when I go to buy, sometimes those houses are so leveraged because of these, and they're backed, by FHA, and that they just take them back. You can't even work a deal on them or try to, for you investors out there trying to fight your way uphill, maybe they've changed it now. I haven't dealt with a reverse mortgage lately on a house, but I just know they won't short sale. No, they're insured.
Yeah, and they're great for the right person. I mean, I had one client one time. She was living off of Social Security. It was like $1,200 a month or something like that. And then we did a reverse mortgage, which brought her total income up to like $3,600 a month instead of the 12. I mean, it was just a complete game changer for her. So for the right person, it can be wonderful but it's not for everybody. Anyway, sorry, touched on a nerve there for me. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that for about.
Honestly, I'm glad that it's touchy with a lot of people. And as long as you have that right person doing, explaining it and stuff, they're a great product. It's just those bad eggs out there that just did them because they did them to get their paycheck and move on.
Oh God, like an ARM loan over the last year or so, maybe 2 years, ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, for those of you listening, they typically have a much lower rate than the fixed rate, which doesn't change. Well, the ARM loans have been 0.25 better in rate. I mean, we're talking. You might as well. I mean, it's just not even. It's anyway. If you're a lender trying to push an ARM loan, you are scrupulous. I mean, you better have a darn good reason for it. If I were an auditor, man. Anyways, hey, to each his own. To each his own. It's fine, but make sure you trust who you're doing business with.
Yeah, and back to all this. Back to this era. Did you go through predatory lending back then?
Well, I started in 2012.
Yeah, well, see, we went during that time frame, predatory lending with this time frame. All the congressmen, everybody was out to get lenders because of this predatory lending. And here, I'll give you a great example of how they don't even know.
They have no idea.
we were still back in Nebraska when this was going on. And the big thing was predatory lending, but nobody knew what it was. It's just like you see it and you know it.
Keyword.
It's kind of like, they did this. This is a bad loan. They're a predatory lender. Well, we went and met with a congressman from Nebraska. In fact, I probably could even say his name because he was a public figure, but we had a big meeting with him and I explained how we disclose things, how they have 3 days to, all this stuff. And they had no idea. They didn't know how a loan worked, how the APR and all this. So it was an interesting time, with that predatory lending stuff too, back in the day. But again, it's just because of all these people jumping in and giving bad loans.
Well, David, there was actually a government a report that was released in 2014 that concluded that the number one factor to the 2008 crash, real estate crash, was institutional investors buying up homes like BlackRock and places like that, buying up huge areas of homes and then leasing out the whole area at a time. But it wasn't on the news. It's on the news today. But that report itself has even been quite hush-hush because it was who was it that was telling the media, hey, it's these predatory lenders. You had to make up that term. Right. Well, it was the institutions themselves that were buying up the homes, telling the media what to say. That's what they say. They blame the lenders. Later on, we find out it was really the big institutions and not the lenders. I always thought it was hysterical that you're going to say that a lender was, and again, I wasn't in the industry back then, but you're going to say a lender dragged someone off the streets. I mean, literally, this is what they said during political debates back then, right? But these lenders are dragging people off the streets, forcing them into mortgages they can't afford. Right, but these same people saying this are the ones that made the laws that says you get to go to jail if you don't offer the mortgage the person qualifies for. So the whole thing was backwards. Yes, there were some crazy ass loans that I heard of, and quite frankly, some of them make me sick to my stomach. So I'm not trying to say they didn't exist, right? But the whole system is to blame. It's not just one person, I think.
Right. No, it is. It's that whole system. But yeah. Those are crazy.
So let's talk about what we're actually going to talk about, which is pricing.
Well, that all had something to do with the pricing back then.
I know. And I'm going to pop this up again. Again, that period that they're talking about where prices started to come back is 2012. So this is kind of where we are in the grand scheme of things. So this guy's saying, by my count, there have been just 7 down years for the U.S. housing market over the last 75 years. Ben Carlson, author of A Wealth of Common Sense, well-recognized blogs on all things wealth and finance, wrote on why housing is everybody's favorite investment. That's losses just 9% of the time, and 5 of those 7 years occurred after a housing bubble popped. More than a decade later, after 2012.
Real quick, let me interrupt you. Do you remember? Yeah. You remember what was it? HARP, where they would reduce what you owe on the house? Wasn't that what it was called?
Yeah. The HARP
David
bailout or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
David, you were doing that back then, right? Yeah, but so they're not mentioning that if you've lost all that, I can't remember how HARP worked because I wasn't involved back then. But what they're not mentioning is that if you did find yourself underwater and then readjusted with HARP, now you owe what you owe, right, or what it's worth, yeah. and then if your values go back up, now I don't know what happened if values went back up to your new HARP loan.
I mean, you can just compare it to how they handled the COVID thing and the extending the payments at the back end of everything. It's pretty much the same.
so in my experience as a 41-year-old man, when the government helps you is when you're part of a huge group. And when you buy a house, you are now part of the home ownership group. And if you're hurting as a home owner in general, like the whole country's hurting at the same time, you get help from the government. And that's kind of what I've discovered. But sorry, keep going.
No, that's a fair point. So more than a decade later, home prices have only gone up since, exponentially so during the pandemic. We talk about that. Interestingly enough, in this latest cycle, mortgage rates soared in a small echo of the 80s, and home sales plummeted, similar to the financial crisis. So what they're talking about is, well, right here, we peaked out in June of 22. Interest rates went up. Okay, we came up again. Interest rates went up again. But overall, the only drops are because we saw interest rates go through the roof, right? I mean, hell, they went up 2 percentage points in 3 months in 2002. That's kind of that's factoring into to the issue. I guess that's a bubble popping. I don't necessarily see that as a bubble popping, though.
I'll
That
just say
chart
out
looks,
loud that it sucked ass when that happened.
Yeah.
that
My
chart,
whole life stopped. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
no, that chart you just showed looks just like that one I was telling you today. I pulled
Yeah.
with '08 till now, and it's just, it has that same
Yeah.
look here in the Denver area.
Yeah. And there's COVID starting. I mean, crap, you know? And,
Boom.
yeah, boom, exactly. And what I always like to show people about home values is look at the general trends on, if it just keeps going in a general trend. Well, we're still at a point now that's higher than we would have been if it was just a general trend. So everything that we gained during COVID is, well, the vast majority of it's still there. We're still just a leap up, out of quantum leap is a stupid phrase to use, but anyway, it's like a quantum leap up from where we should have been had
I
everything
wonder if we
stayed
could get
normal.
I wonder if we could get a graph like that on the price of overall price of food or the overall price of water. I have always said that
Huh.
we sell one of the three must-haves: the food, shelter, or water. Right? We
Yeah.
sell shelter, and I don't know how you have a price crash, like true crash, for decades at a time in something that's a must-have. Right? Right? Like no one's going to want less water tomorrow than they wanted today. Right? We already have a housing shortage today. Same argument with food, right? I'm going to still need to eat tomorrow, right? And so
Right.
I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. I
No,
love this
you're
argument.
good. I was actually just trying to desperately find that chart, but I couldn't find it yet, so I'll have to go here in a
Oh,
second.
see, that would be really, really cool because I wonder if it would correlate to home prices. I'd be very interested in
Yeah,
looking at the correlation.
that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah, but maybe
Um,
there's no correlation at all. But it's hey, food, water, or shelter. This is not something I made up. This is these are these are known things.
yeah, seriously. But anyway, we'll keep going. I'll keep trying to find that chart. But home prices really haven't fallen. The latest reading showed home prices rose 5.4% in June. That's of this year from a year earlier. Another all-time high, despite showing signs of slowing. Again, this is nationwide, not specific markets. Either way, it doesn't seem as though home prices are going to fall anytime soon, even if there's no longer rising as rapidly as they had been during the pandemic. Housing policy analysts, urban economists, regular economists, and even some real estate executives will mostly tell you why with one single reason: there aren't enough homes. The deficit of homes in this country didn't happen all of a sudden. It's been a result of years of underbuilding and in some places decades of policy failure that made it almost impossible to build anything but single family homes, thanks to zoning and land use regulations, all controlled by the localities. In other words, cities like Austin weren't allowing people to put up apartment complexes and condos and stuff. It was single family homes.
Do you remember
What all happened?
Austin? Do you remember the city council said that they didn't want to build more roads because it
Yeah,
would incite people or induce people to move here?
that's
So
right.
they
That was in
decided to
the late 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, they decided to ignore all of the growth warning signs on purpose to try and get people not to move here.
Yep.
Oh,
That's it. That was all happening before the pandemic housing boom, which only worsened things and helped. Housing crisis that had been somewhat contained to coastal blue states spread. I mean, we've got it all over Texas now. Um, and I wanted to hit this before I stopped, but it was a sudden change in the mortgage rates triggered by the Federal Reserve's fight to tame inflation that hit the brakes on the housing market, at one point sending rates to a 2-decade high. Anybody who locked in with a 3% mortgage rate or around that isn't selling unless they have to. Steve, we've talked about that ad nauseum on here.
yeah.
Um,
No, you double your payment or you take half the house.
yeah,
You sell your
exactly.
2,000 square foot home and move into a 1,000 square foot home. That could work. Otherwise, I hope you're getting a huge gross increase in your pay, which statistically you're not.
Yeah, that's right.
So, anyways, keep going.
No, some of this is just an artifact of 30-year mortgages, Redfin chief executive said. It actually has the perverse effect of keeping home prices high. He's one exec who believes the only way to get out of this is by building homes. And then luckily mortgage rates have come down, inventory has gone back up. So the situation is less bleak for anyone who doesn't already have a home, but it's still pretty dire. On the other hand, it's looking good for homeowners who are watching their home values continue to appreciate, even though it doesn't exactly make them rich unless they sell, at which point they'll need another home to live in. Not many see home prices dropping anytime soon unless millions of homes miraculously appear. why one presidential candidate has vowed to end the housing shortage, laying out a plan to build 3 million more homes. It's not totally clear how she'll do it, if it'll be enough, or if she'll get the chance to put her plan in action. So a lot of stuff there, but overall, I mean, what they're saying is exactly what we've been talking about. Okay, we still don't have enough houses to sell. And that's going to continue to lead to charts like this. I mean, thoughts on that?
Well, I'm kind of guilty of some of those articles because I have rentals that are at 3-something% right now.
Yep.
As much it'd be nice to sell some of them, it's just like I'll never get that rate again.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where if you do this responsibly, you can retire quite well. But if you live through fear, you'll never bite the bullet and do it, right? And what I mean by that is, my first home I bought in 2004, and it's the payment that I had for it was $1,100 a month. Okay. I sold that home. I should have actually, at the time, I probably needed to sell it, but if I could go back in time, I would have tried to convince myself to hold on to it and rent it out. The next home that we bought was $112,000, I think it was, and I ended up paying something like $1,200 a month for that. That home now is worth $500,000. Again, wish I would have instead of selling it and then moving into the next home. I wish I would have just held on to it, rented it out, and moved into the next home. And now I'm in this next home, and my payment is $2,200, and it's doubled almost in value. I mean, I'm up like 48%, 47% since we bought it. If you do this the right way, you always live at your means, save a little bit, buy another house, and then don't sell the old one, right? Yeah. And buying a house doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, I've got a client right now that is closing on a home, and all he has to do is bring $4,000 to buy the home. And hey, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? My language by saying all he has to do is have $4,000. $4,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people, but I can almost guarantee you that your rent, your first and last month rent you have to pay, is going to be roughly $4,000 or close to it, right? And the sellers are contributing some money. He's taking advantage of a program, and suddenly $4,000 he buys his home. Well, what if he did that every 3 or 4 years? Right. Yep. According to this chart, after 30 or 40 years, the guy's going to be able to sell all these other homes and retire very happily, very happily. And there's all those haters out there that you were talking about, Chris. They're like, well, you guys only want to sell houses because you're making money. Well, yeah, I make money. I want to sell a house. F you, man. Of course I do. But statistically, it makes sense. I'm not just telling you to, sign up for the devil or something, right? I'm literally selling Jesus here, right? Like this is good stuff, man. It's good stuff. I probably went too far on that one, but you know what I mean? I'm trying to say.
We're not pulling numbers out of our butts. Like this is freaking data. You can look at it. I mean, I don't care how big of a doom and gloom naysayer you are, unless you have better data than I do, then shut up.
If my clients could pipe in here, if they knew I was on, they'd tell you too what I tell them. But a lot of people just, because, I flip houses too and invest. A lot of people go out with me and we look at houses and they look at it in that mindset though.
Right.
It really inhibits them to buy, and I have to take them back and rear them back. And I tell them, I'm like, look, if you're buying for short term here, don't do it.
No.
Unless you're doing what I do, where you go out, you tear that, you get the, all this, but this is different.
Yeah, that's different.
David,
I'm like, if you always look at it like how a lot, start to look at them like, oh, I'm gonna lose they're never going to buy. And I have to just tell them,
fear. Yeah.
You're on a 2-year plan in this market right now. If you're on short term, do not buy, because if you're going to sell in a couple of years.
I'll tell you though, I'm interested to hear what you think about commercial. I think there'll be a huge opportunity for large city commercial buildings, large tower buildings here very soon, but no one knows what to do with them. Right. Yeah. It's like the shopping mall is collapsing. What the hell do you do with a shopping mall? They're giving it away for $20,000. I don't know what to do with it. Right. I think a lot of people like you that flip properties might turn in, or at least attempt to, buy a big property and flip that thing into a residential building from a commercial.
I actually own something that we could potentially do. I'll have to tell you about it after. I think Chris wants to
Yep.
say something.
I'll
No,
tell you,
I just
the
Oh, I thought you were
commercial.
timing us out there.
No, it's funny. No, but for everybody that that doesn't know this, buying a commercial building is easier than buying a residential building.
Totally.
We don't need your credit score. By the way, I do commercial loans. Anybody interested, you call me, please. I'm a broker. I can get you great rates. We don't even look at the credit score. You need to have some money, right? Or find someone who does. And we got to make sure the numbers work on the building. Other than that, though, it's pretty easy getting a commercial loan. Anyways, I'm sorry. Keep going here.
No, you're good. I just found I found a water chart for you. I can't find one of these on food. It's all bar graphs. But
Look at that, though.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's going, and it's comparing it to average earnings,
They
right?
need to have Colorado in there.
For
Our
water,
water's so
it would be way the
expensive.
hell up here.
Yeah, we'd be way up there.
Oh,
But would
man.
you look at that? It even had the peak and the drop and that's almost.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that correlates.
Well, here, let me get it back up. So this peak is 98.99. That's the .com burst, and I don't know if that correlates to the water. But here's the financial recession, the Great Recession.
We slowed down right after 2008. I mean, at least the acceleration slowed.
Yeah,
I'd say there's some correlation there. That's interesting.
just a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah. I would say so.
Man, I'd love to see that up to today's date.
yeah, right. And I don't know if y'all saw this, but Michael did drop on us, build more breweries, and I think we can all get bored with that.
I agree. We'll take that. But yeah, to your commercial comment, that's another shoe to drop all in itself right now, or all these commercial loans come and due because they put those on such short terms and everything, and
3 to 5 years. Yeah.
I own a storage facility. I have 148 tenants.
Good for you. Oh man.
But the best thing of it is zoned multifamily residential. It's grandfathered in.
Oh, dude.
And we're right in the
Colorado Springs.
Yeah, we're right in the
Nice.
redevelopment area going on. But the thing, speaking of those bad agents out there, the lady that was representing that seller didn't do that guy because she didn't even dig into all that, and that place was a home run. But the commercial side of it, that's going to be an interesting one when these loans and stuff can't. Who knows? You see where I don't know. I've been through those commercial loans, some of that, and I just don't know how some of these people are going to refinance some of those or do it.
They're not.
Those office buildings and strip malls are just.
Oh yeah, I owe $250 million. My loan is due for renewal, and the building is worth $80 million. Sorry, bank. You can have it. Take it back. See you later.
I'm done. Yeah.
We have a building over by one area in Highlands Ranch. You go by, the signs like we got 800,000 square feet for rent. It hasn't really come down or said anything.
Yeah.
It just sits there.
You could rephrase that too. We can't find any renters and we're screwed soon. Yeah. It's the same thing,
Please come and occupy this building.
Yes.
I'll tell you, I've run into a lot of heavy hitters down here where we're talking, 200,000 in income a month kind of stuff from rentals that today are losing 60 to 80,000 a month, and man, you talk to some of these guys. It's mostly guys, I talk to them and it's, they talk about their daughters or their sons and, what are they going to do when they have to sell their house? And there's a lot of people hurting right now in that department.
Oh.
Now, if you did what I suggested earlier, which was you buy your mortgage at a residential, normal rate, right? And then 5-10 years later, when it's time to move on to the next house, you rent it out. You won't have a problem like these guys do. These guys are trying to make their 12% or whatever they need to make to make their numbers work. If you did what I'm suggesting, you're renting your home up for double than what you're paying. You know what I mean? And then even in bad times, you'd still be fine. But that's because you got a normal residential mortgage on it and moved forward, 5 years, 10 years at a time, not 15 rentals a month kind of thing. These other guys are picking up, but
now, on that note, I thought I saw this yesterday and I did. So I'm going to pop this, just the headline, because I don't subscribe to the New York Times. Did y'all see this?
Well, I remember seeing things popping up about that.
I'm starting to see more and more of these large corporations that are like, no, you're coming back into the office.
So I guarantee you, this is simply an opportunity for other entrepreneurs to entice great workers that need to work at home. I think
you're right.
think that we will never go back.
There's a lot of people who will just because of mindset, but you're right. Like there's going to be people that are primed for the picking.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is
So-
corporate workers. These are CEOs and stuff.
Yeah, I'm a top Amazon employee or engineer, let's say, and I'm pissed that I have to go back to the office and I throw out my resume, and people know me by name at that point, right? Are you kidding me? Yeah, we'll get you top, whatever at our company. Yeah, here's your perk package. Let's go, right? It's, of course, stay at home. I think once the competition, like capitalism, right, we'll solve that. I think, and in a free market, people are working from home.
Well, that again is what's driving up the prices out here, and especially the outer areas with
but it should
and stuff, because everybody's working at home. Everybody's moving from downtown to out, all these areas and these acreages. And back to the early 2000s, you couldn't give those properties away for $500,000. And now I wish I would have bought 100 of them because they're $2 to $4 million now.
And on a long enough timeline, when you add in inflation, assets will keep going up in value. I mean, just what they do.
That chart, because I'm from Nebraska. I'm a huge Warren Buffett fan, and I own Berkshire. And if you go look at his stock performance, it's not sexy, but it's just a constant.
We just mentioned him. I mentioned him just a few weeks ago on the show. 95% of his wealth he made after the age of 65.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. Compound interest. The longer you're in the market, the more money you make. He's going to make more money this year than he did, 10 years ago, that whole decade. Right. Because it just keeps going up and up and up and up. Right. So, time and market.
Yeah, and you can go walk right up to his front door in Omaha. He lives in an area where modest house. You walk right, and probably worth by now, a couple million, but back then it wasn't anything too spectacular.
I remember in the 90s when I was in school, there was an article that came out that said he lived in a $200,000 home.
Yep.
And in the 90s, that wasn't $1 million home, and that was probably 600,000, something like that. But not that bad.
Do I get to tell a quick story about Buffett?
Nope. Yeah, of course. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
You'll like it. So every year they have the shareholder meeting, and him and Bill Gates are like friends, or back then, or whatever they were doing. And anyway, Warren, I think, was taking him to the airport and had one of his old cars, whatever he was driving, broke down on the freeway. And they called a taxi to come get him, but they both had the hood up, looking in the motor and trying to figure out what was up, and it was the richest guys in the world,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Imagine being the taxi driver.
Right? Probably got a little bit of a tip.
Yeah,
no kidding, right?
But anyway, back to housing. What Burke stock looks just like that grid.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, like we talk about it all the time. All right. If you've got people that are either investing or, are relocating or whatever, and they ask you, okay, should I buy a house? I mean, Steve, you just said that you tell them to wait for 2 months.
Yeah. I said if you're going to wait, in all of my history of doing this, I would be okay with you waiting for the next 2 months. And if I were buying, I'd probably wait for the next 2 months just to see what the world looks like at the end of it. But no, I think buying is always a good idea. I mean, always. Now that being said, if you're going to live here for 3 months on a temporary assignment, that's stupid. You rent. I mean, that's different, right? And in fact, the historical number, which I know has changed recently. I just heard the new one. I can't remember what it was, but the idea was if you're going to buy, don't do it unless your plan is to stay there for 5 years or longer, right? Because then you would recoup on the opening closing costs that you had to, your initial costs to get the house, right? You're not going to buy and sell it next month and make money. I mean, in order to do that, you'd have to be in an appreciating environment that's I'm not sure we've ever been in that kind of environment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave, tell me, Denver, Colorado, Littleton, Colorado. Is it going anywhere, that market?
No, it's not going anywhere. I watch it pretty heavily in here. And, again, right now, I think we have kind of flatlined just a little bit. But as far as the downturn of prices and so forth, I don't see it. I mean, it hasn't done anything right now. I mean, yeah, the days on market are going up and this and that, but these homes are still, they're still up there. And you see these price decreases going on. Everybody's like, oh, I see all these price decreases. It's the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's like, it's because people are still trying to get those numbers what they could have got a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the prices that they're selling at now, or if they sell even less than where they're at, if you do what they, if you look at the numbers, what they paid for it, how long they've been there, it's crazy still, but everybody has to look at the price. All my sellers, if I tell them we got to drop the price, like, oh my God, what are we going to tell them? We drop the price. That looks bad. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I'll explain it to them. And
right.
That's the thing. I mean, the price is still at a big decrease. Just, you got to look at everything in order to determine if the market has really shifted that much. And no, out here, that's not happening.
So then the other thing I want to add to that is that anyone buying a home needs to remember that when times are rough, you go one way. When times are good, it doesn't always make sense to get the best loan, right? So like, for instance, right now, government loans are assumable, all of them.
Yep.
Meaning that the new buyer can show up and take over your interest rate. Now, if you have a conventional mortgage, that's not an option. So when back in the day, the conventional would have been, for a high credit score person, would have been maybe a $30 better payment a month, right? But if you had planned for the future, and who knows about rates going up, but I'll give you in on a little secret here. They won't stay low forever, and they won't stay high forever. So if they're low, there's only almost one way for them to go, and if they're high, there's usually only one way for them to go. If you had thought ahead a little bit and got a government loan, you would have all the buyers in the world right now. You don't have an issue if you have a government loan that you're willing to do that with.
Man, that is a really, really good point. And if you're doing that, call somebody like Steve, who can explain how to get past your mortgage insurance and stuff like that, because there's ways to get by it, especially now when buyers are negotiating. You can get past those things. So that's why
in some loans you can, not in all of them.
Well, yeah, but again, that's why they're calling you and not me.
In fact, I got to be honest with you, I hate FHA loans today. The fact that they are assumable is the only thing I like about them. The 2008 happened, and then the government got together, and they're like, well, let's make it better. And then what they came up with was something far worse. For instance, David, you may be fascinated to hear that if I were to do an FHA loan today, and I put anything less than 10% down, my mortgage insurance lasts for all 30 years on the mortgage.
I know it's crazy now. That's
all 360 payments. And for those watching, mortgage insurance is insurance on your mortgage. But who owns the mortgage, you guys? Is it you or the bank? It's the bank.
It's the bank.
So it's literally an insurance policy that the homeowner, gets to pay for, that protects the bank from you when you can't pay. Tell me one other industry that works that way. Go on, I'll wait.
Yep. Good old funding fee.
Yeah.
Nothing works that way. And with conventional mortgages, you can just pay a small fee right up front and buy out of it. Or you can reduce it by certain tricks, or you can pay it for 7 years and it goes away, or 11 years, but it depends on, upfront numbers. But it goes away eventually with yes, Carolyn, it goes away eventually with conventional. It does not with FHA unless you put a large amount of money down. And then when you do put a large amount of money down, it still stays for, I think it's 11 years. So to protect the bank from you. Anyways, I'm off on a tangent now. I got to stop. We're almost at like an hour. Jesus.
That's what that lending business will do to you. That's why I got
when it's all you do, it's all you have to talk about, right? And then you get all angry about little things like FHA loans and fees are charging the buyer. It's not okay. Yeah.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up there. And if y'all are watching this after the fact, guys, drop comments in. We love answering questions on that stuff. David, thanks, man. I appreciate you hanging out with us. And as always,
Thanks,
Mr.
sir.
Babcock, thank you.
Thanks
Guys,
for having me.
Cheers.
yeah, man. We will see y'all next Monday.
See you guys.